When a contact is marked as a favorite in the detail controller, we'd like to display a star in the master list. While it might seem like the table view has its hooks into our data source and is always listening for changes to the data, unfortunately, that's not how it works. The table view is just an inert object, in the sense that if the underlying data changes, it won't show these changes automatically. Instead, we need to ask the table view to reload the data, and it does this by querying the data source methods all over again. We're going to make the contact list controller act as a delegate. Now, in the prepare for segue method, as you see here, when we get a reference to the detail controller, this line of code, let's assign self as the delegate. So we'll say contact detail controller delegate equal self. Of course, to get this to work, we need to conform to the delegate protocol and provide an implementation for that single method. So after the class definition, we'll say extension contact list controller. It's going to act as the contact detail controller delegate. So this is where things get tricky because of our choice of model type. So we'll type out this method name, so did mark as favorite. Now, were this a class, the contact type, it would be the same reference being passed around, and we could change the isFavorite property value and reload the table view. Contact is a struct, however, and everything is passed by value, meaning this is just a copy. If I change the property value on the contact passed here as an argument, that does nothing to the copy stored in the array because it is a copy. Okay, so to get around all of this, first we're going to create two variables in here to hold on to index values. We'll call the first one outer index. The type here is array.index, and we're going to make this optional and set it to nil. For the second one, we'll do the same, but we'll call it inner index, and this is array.index, nil. All we have right now is a contact that we favorited. We need to iterate through the data source, the section data, find the spot that this contact is in. Now, even though this is a copy, we can say, okay, is where in the array is a copy that is equal to this one. So we'll find the spot that the contact is in, then we'll grab that copy, mutate the right property, and assign it back to the data source. Now to do this, first we need to iterate over the outer array, since the section data is an array of arrays. I can use a for-in loop to do this, but then I'd need a local variable to keep track of the index value. So instead, I'm going to use a for-in loop in conjunction with the enumerated method. Enumerated, called on a collection, returns a sequence of pairs, n and x in a tuple basically, where n represents a consecutive integer starting at 0, also known as an index, and x represents an element of the sequence. Sounds complicated? Doesn't have to be. So all we're going to do is say for, and here we'll create a tuple, and what this does is create this pair n and x, where n is the index, x is the element in the sequence, so for in sections.enumerated. Now, of course, since we can assign these to local constants, we can give these better names. So we'll, instead of saying n and x, we'll say index. And this inner array is an array of contacts, so we'll say contacts. Now inside this loop, contacts is an array of contacts. So now we can use the index of method to get the index for a given contact. If the contact exists in the array, we can get an index back. Otherwise, the method returns nil. It's a failable one. So if let index of contact equal contacts.index of contact. Now this won't work, and you'll get an error just as I do, and that's because we haven't defined a way of comparing two contact instances. To do that, we need to conform to the equatable protocol and provide an implementation for double equals. Now this is a boring bit of code, so just grab the link from the teacher's notes provided below and paste that in. And now this should work. So inside here, we now have the index of the spot in the section data where this contact appears. So what are we going to do inside this if-let statement? Well, now we want to know which section we're in and which row we're in, essentially. which is basically we need what outer nested array are we in, and inside that nested array, what specific element are we at? And we're already tracking that. Index here refers to the outer arrays, right? The sections in the data. And then index of contact is the element. So we can say outer index equal index, inner index equal index of contact. And the second we do this, once we get the index values we want, we're going to break out of the loop. Now, after the for loop, since these variables hold optional values, after we break out of the loop, we'll unwrap them using a guard statement. So we'll say if let outer index equal outer index, let inner index equal inner index. And inside, we can finally write the code that we want to write, which is to get the contact out of the data source. So we'll say var favorite contact equals sections. Use the outer index to get at the relevant contacts array since they're sorted alphabetically, and then the inner index to get the actual contact. Now that we have the contact, we're going to mutate the stored property. So favorite contact dot isFavorite equal true, and then we'll assign it back into the data source since all we're doing here is mutating a copy and not mutating that underlying value. And we can do that by saying sections, outer index, inner index, equal favorite contact. And then, after doing all of this, we can reload the table view so that it runs through the data source methods again. And we do that by saying table view dot reload data. When it does this, for contacts that have the isFavorite set to true, we'll see a star displayed in the row. But we can't do that just yet, and that's because in main.storyboard, when we were designing this just so we could see what it looked like, we assigned the actual star here. We don't want to do that. We want to keep this empty, and we'll only assign the star if we favored the contact. So if we go back here, let's select a simulator and hit play. So now here we have a list of contacts. I can scroll through, and then I can click on any one of them and then mark as favorite, and then go back, and you should see a star. Pretty cool. The takeaway here was to highlight two things to show you how to use the delegate pattern to communicate back from detail to the master so that when we return to the master, changes have been made and reflected in the UI. Second, the important thing is how your choice of data type matters. We had a lot of code we needed to write because we chose a struct over a class. This code wouldn't have been necessary with a class, but then we would be losing the immutability safety aspects that we get from the copy behavior with structs. Now, in this case, what do? Well, the contact model's state, that is, the data type, knows whether it is a favorite or not, and this can change. So it matters whether we have a copy or a reference. This change is also reflected across multiple views. So here a reference type is better, and a class would have been the better choice to use as our data type. Okay, we're almost at the end here. Let's wrap up all this code with a little refactor in the next video.